My name is Evelyn Carter. I am 29 years old, and I live in a small quiet town just outside Portland, Oregon. I always believed that life was meant to be simple: morning coffees, cozy sweaters in winter, walks under the soft glow of the sun, and love that stayed loyal. I grew up believing in fairy tales. I believed in best friends, in promises, in the kind of love that never turns cold. But life, as I later learned, is not a fairy tale. Sometimes, the people who sit beside you with the warmest smiles are the ones holding the sharpest knives behind your back. I met her when I was in college. Her name was Sophie Lane. She was tall, blonde, and the kind of girl who never needed to try too hard to be liked. People loved her instantly. I wasn't jealous, at least not back then. I was quieter, the bookish type, someone who'd rather spend time in the library than at parties. But Sophie noticed me. She walked up to me one morning in our second semester and simply sat next to me. We talked for hours. That was how it all started. Sophie and I became inseparable. We were the kind of friends people spoke about, the goals kind of friendship. We had inside jokes, matching necklaces, and endless late-night conversations about dreams, heartbreaks, and the future. I trusted her with everything. She knew all my secrets, my fears, my weaknesses. She even knew about my journal and where I kept it. 2 years later, I met Nathaniel Carter. Nathan. The man who would change my life and eventually break it. Nathan was smart, calm, and deeply kind. He wasn't flashy or arrogant, just real. When he smiled, it was never for attention, it was because he meant it. I was drawn to his quiet strength, and before long, we were in love. Sophie liked him too. She used to say she was happy for me, and maybe she really was, at first. She teased us, helped plan our dates, even picked out my outfit for our engagement dinner. When Nathan and I got married, Sophie stood beside me in a pale lavender dress, holding my bouquet while I held tears in my eyes. Looking back, I remember the way her hand shook when she passed me the flowers. I didn't notice it then. I was too caught up in the joy, the dreams, the vows. But that was the first crack. The first quiet tremble before the storm. Life moved on. Nathan and I started our new journey as husband and wife. We bought a small house with a garden. I planted lilies. He built a wooden swing in the backyard. Our life wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Sophie was always around: Sunday brunches, random movie nights, surprise visits. I didn't mind. She was my best friend. I wanted her there. I never once thought I should keep my eyes open. But sometimes, betrayal doesn't scream. It whispers. It started with small things. Nathan became quieter when Sophie was around. He laughed too hard at her jokes. Once, I caught them looking at each other, not in a way friends look, but in a way two people do when something is hidden between them. I brushed it off. I told myself I was being paranoid. I was overthinking. Sophie would never hurt me. Nathan loved me. I reminded myself of this every night before bed. But the heart knows. One evening, I came home earlier than usual. My work meeting got canceled, and I decided to surprise Nathan with his favorite pie. I stepped into the house and heard laughter, Sophie's laughter. It echoed through the kitchen. I stopped. Something felt off. I walked slowly, my heart louder than my steps. There was nothing inappropriate. Just two people, talking and laughing over coffee. But the way she touched his hand when she laughed, the way he didn't pull away, it was wrong. So very wrong. I smiled. I said nothing. I went to our bedroom, locked the door, and cried on the floor like a child. I didn't know what was happening, but I knew something had changed. Something sacred between me and Nathan had been touched, and it wasn't mine anymore. I wish I could say that I confronted them right then. That I stood tall and strong. But I didn't. I waited. I watched. I hoped I was wrong. For months, I lived like a ghost in my own home. I watched them, the shared glances, the quiet silences, the excuses. Sophie visited even more often. Nathan started working late. Sometimes he would leave early on weekends, saying he needed space. I kept believing him because I needed to believe. I didn't want to imagine a world where my best friend could stab me and my husband could hand her the knife. The truth came crashing on a Tuesday. I was cleaning the closet when I found Nathan's old phone in a box. It still had some battery left. I pressed the power button and waited. It opened without a passcode. I wasn't looking for anything. I swear I wasn't. But maybe a part of me already knew what I would find. There were messages. Hundreds of them. They weren't just flirty or playful. They were intimate. Deep. Emotional. There were texts from months back. Sophie saying how she wished he was hers. Nathan saying he felt trapped. Conversations about me, my habits, my flaws, my reactions. They had shared everything behind my back. Every fight I had with Nathan, every breakdown, every insecurity, he had handed it to her like a gift. I felt numb. My body froze. I wanted to scream, but the sound got stuck somewhere inside my chest. My whole world collapsed in a screen full of words. That night, I didn't cry. I sat on our bed and looked at our wedding photos. I saw a woman who was in love, standing beside two people who were already building a secret world without her. I wondered how long they had been in love. Maybe they never stopped. Maybe Sophie had always wanted what I had. Maybe Nathan had always loved the way she lived without rules. I didn't know. I would never know. I didn't confront them. Not yet. I needed time. I needed to breathe. Instead, I smiled more. I acted normal. I let them dig their own grave while I stayed still. I stopped trying. I stopped crying. I stopped fighting for something that was already dead. A week later, Sophie invited me for coffee at her apartment. I went. I sat across from her, watching her face, her hands, her carefully rehearsed stories. She had no idea that I knew. She laughed like always, and I played along. But something inside me had changed. Something had died. That night, I packed a bag. I didn't tell Nathan anything. I left a note that simply said, "I know." I drove to my sister's place in Seattle. I spent the next few days in silence, staring at the walls, trying to rebuild myself piece by piece. My phone kept ringing. Messages poured in. First from Nathan, then from Sophie. Apologies. Explanations. Denials. None of it mattered. I knew the truth. That was enough. They say time heals all wounds. I don't believe that. Time doesn't heal, it teaches you how to live with the scar. After I left Nathan and Sophie behind, I became a stranger to my own life. The mornings were the hardest. Waking up in a bed that wasn't mine, in a room that didn't smell like home, staring at a ceiling that held no memories, it all felt like I had been dropped into someone else's story. I stayed at my sister's place for weeks. She asked questions, but I never gave real answers. I wasn't ready to speak. I wasn't ready to be the woman who got betrayed. Every night, I stared at myself in the mirror and tried to recognize the woman looking back. My eyes had lost their light. My smile was fake. I used to be someone who believed in people. I used to be someone who trusted too much. Now, I couldn't even trust myself. I started therapy. My sister insisted. At first, I sat in silence. Then the words came slowly, one by one, like bricks being pulled off my chest. The therapist listened without judgment. She didn't tell me to move on. She didn't tell me to forgive. She simply reminded me that I was still here, still breathing, still standing. I began to write again. Not in a journal like before, but in letters. I wrote one to Sophie. I didn't send it. I wrote one to Nathan. I tore it up. But it helped. Putting the pain into words made it real. And real pain, as cruel as it sounds, is better than numbness. One rainy afternoon, I stood in front of the mirror again. I looked older, but wiser. My skin looked pale, but my eyes had a quiet fire in them. That's when I decided I would go back. Not to him. Not to her. But to my home. To my city. To the life I left behind. I needed to face them. When I walked into the house that used to be mine, I felt nothing. The lilies in the garden had dried. The swing was broken. Dust covered the corners like time had decided to stop without me. Nathan was home. He looked shocked to see me. He stood up, mumbled something, but I raised my hand. I didn't come for words. I didn't come for closure. I came for my own freedom. I walked to the bedroom, packed the rest of my clothes, my books, my favorite mug. I didn't rush. I moved like I owned the space, because once I did. And I needed to reclaim myself from it. Before leaving, I looked at him. For the first time, I didn't see the man I married. I saw a stranger, someone who let love rot, someone who watched me drown and handed someone else the lifeboat. He asked if we could talk. I shook my head. Talking won't undo the nights he spent building a secret world with Sophie. Talking won't erase the lies, the shared laughter behind my back, the betrayal. I walked out without looking back. Sophie called me the next day. I answered. She cried. She begged. She told me she didn't plan for it to happen. That it was messy, confusing, unintentional. That she loved me. That she missed me. I stayed quiet. Then I said one sentence. You didn't steal my husband. You stole my trust. And that's something you'll never earn back. I hung up. After that, I rebuilt myself. Not all at once. Not with dramatic changes. But slowly, day by day. I moved into a small apartment. I painted the walls warm yellow. I bought a bookshelf and filled it with all the novels I once loved but had forgotten to read. I adopted a cat. Her name is Olive. She doesn't talk much, but she understands silence better than any human I know. I started freelancing as a writer, then teaching online, then traveling. I saw cities I'd only read about: Paris, Prague, Barcelona. I walked alone in foreign streets, and for the first time in years, I felt whole. Yes, I was betrayed. Yes, I was broken. But I wasn't ruined. There were days I missed the old life, not Nathan, not Sophie, but the illusion. The comfort. The predictability. But then I'd remember that version of my life was built on a lie. And I was never meant to stay inside a lie. A year passed. I heard they got engaged. Sophie and Nathan. My hands didn't shake when I read it on someone's post. My heart didn't break. I smiled. Not because I was happy for them, but because I had survived them. I never reached out again. I never needed to. My silence was my power. One evening, while teaching an online class about emotional resilience, a student asked me, "How did you survive betrayal from your best friend and your husband?" I paused. Then I said, "By choosing myself every single day. By understanding that what they did says more about their soul than about my worth. By refusing to let the people who hurt me become the reason I hate myself. And most importantly, by learning that no one, not even your best friend, deserves the parts of you that you haven't even healed yet." The lesson? We can't always choose what happens to us. But we can always choose what we do next. Pain doesn't make you weak, staying in pain does. Get up. Walk away. Rebuild. Not for revenge, but for yourself. Because there is power in surviving, and even greater power in rising without bitterness. And to the ones who betrayed you, let them live with the weight of what they lost. You, my dear, have already won.